Welcome into episode 134 of The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm August Trometer.
Worried about your Internet of Things? Princeton has a tool for that. Worried about hotels and data security? You should be. And Apple takes steps against scammy subscriptions. Take our hands as we trip lovingly through the checklist. Brought to you by SecureMac. How would you, yes, you, like to help secure the Internet of Things? No? Well, how about finding out whether your IoT devices are talking about you without you knowing it? Before we get to those answers, maybe a bit of a reminder. What are we talking about, August, when we talk about the Internet of Things?
Well, it's a network of things, right?
There you go.
Actually, it's so much more. You know, it's all of your smart devices, light bulbs, refrigerators, thermostats. But it's also things that you don't really think of, like sensors can be part of the Internet of Things, and so much more. And all of these devices and sensors and electronics, essentially, they're all connected and they give you very useful information. I've got all kinds of IoT things around the house here, and I love them. But they're also possibly giving information to third parties. So the Internet of Things is not always just the device, it's the data as well. And, some of that data that it sends back to third parties is harmless. For example, if you had like a weather monitor that you put out on your balcony, maybe it sends back your current temperature to somebody in the cloud so they can take that, analyze what weather patterns are, and predict the weather in your area. But some of that data isn't harmless. For example, location might be something that you don't want to be shared with other people. So you really have to think about all of those things together when you think about the Internet of Things.
No, that's sort of a brief description, although for people who want to know more, there are a couple of checklists you can check out. Checklist number 42, the Internet of Things, New Devices, New Concerns, is a show we did. And checklist number 53, how many light bulbs does it take to change the internet? So a couple of examinations there if you'd like to go a bit deeper into the IoT thing. As far as what we're talking about today, a piece from TechCrunch says researchers at Princeton University have built a web app that lets you spy on your smart home devices to see what they're up to. There is a catch, though. The tool also lets them spy on your smart home devices to see what they're up to. It's a Mac-only app right now. IOT Inspector is what it's called, and it's available for download from Princeton's site. Researchers say in a blog post that their aim is to offer a simple tool for consumers to analyze the network traffic of their internet-connected gizmos. The basic idea is to help people see whether devices such as smart speakers or Wi-Fi-enabled robot vacuum cleaners are sharing their data with third parties. Does it work? Well, it does in the lab. Researchers say they found a Chromecast device constantly contacting Google servers, even when not in active use. And a Genie smart bulb was also found to be constantly communicating with the cloud, sending and receiving traffic via a URL that's operated by a Chinese-based company with a platform which controls IoT devices. TechCrunch says there's one wrinkle, though I'd argue that there are actually two or three. The one wrinkle TechCrunch sees, the web app doesn't work with Safari, requiring either Firefox or Google Chrome or a Chromium-based browser to work. The other wrinkle or two that I see is the sharing. The piece points out that the team at Princeton do want to use the gathered data to feed IoT research, so users of the tool will be contributing to efforts to study smart home devices. In other words, to find out whether info is being gathered on you, you'll have to allow info to be gathered on you. That said, Princeton says all of the info will be anonymized. It also says that computers, tablets, and smartphones are eliminated by default, and there are instructions on how to make sure a device you don't want to show up in the study won't show up in the study. You're laughing. What?
Well, look, I don't want to disparage Princeton. I think this is some really cool stuff that they've done, and it gives you insight into what's going on in your home and with all of your Internet of Things devices. But I sort of feel like this is kind of like a neighbor telling you they've got a telescope that can see into your house, and you go, oh, well, that's cool because now I can see what's going on. But then you realize, but now my neighbor can see into my house. So I would say, when it comes to all this stuff, just keep in mind that any connected device can be sending information to more than just you. And the Princeton tool helps you try and track that down and figure out what's going on there. It also means that because they're connected, bad guys can hack into them for their own nefarious purposes. Remember the Nests with microphones? While hackers weren't really kind of the source of the problem there, what if they were hacked and then were able to listen in on your home? How awful would that be? And like I said, what Princeton doing is it's really cool, and I like that people are out there doing that. I like that their privacy policy is kind of upfront, and I really don't have any reason to think they're doing anything bad with that data. But it does prove that your devices are conduits into your personal life, and you really should be aware of that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and it feels weird to say, here's how you find out if you're leaking more data. Open a spigot for more data. But they do also say that they're anonymizing it, and let's come back to that in just a minute. It is worth noting the researchers say that they may share the findings with other researchers. Still, it's not as bad as, Facebook sharing with whomever they share with, because Facebook, am I right? That's our fourth story, by the way. The Princeton team says, with IoT Inspector, we are the first in the research community to produce an open source, anonymized data set of actual IoT network traffic, where the identity of each device is labeled. We hope to invite any academic researchers to collaborate with us, for example, to analyze the data or to improve the data collection and advance our knowledge on IoT security, privacy, and other related fields, such as network performance. So far, this sounds pretty altruistic. If you're like me, you're saying, what's in it for me? Except, you're saying it about you, not what's in it for Ken. According to the project's FAQ, IoT Inspector aims to provide you with transparency into your IoT devices. For example, whether your IoT device is sharing your information with third parties, whether your IoT device is hacked, for instance, engaged in a DDoS attack, or whether your IoT device is slowing down your home network. Now, here, to me, is the craziest part of the whole thing. The piece says up to 50 smart devices can be tracked on the network where IoT Inspector is running. Anyone with more than 50 devices is asked to contact the researchers to ask for an increase to that limit. I think if you have over 50, you might actually want to consult someone, because my goodness, over 50? Here's the question I was going to ask you.
It's like the crazy cat lady of electronics.
Well, okay, here's the thing. So I'm thinking about doing this, and when I go into my head, I try to figure out, okay, well, how many connected devices do I really have? Because the way this app has been built, it's not going to find my Mac, it's not going to find my iPad, it's not going to find my iPhone, right? And those are the three things that I think about as being connected devices. Now, what it said was it's not going to find computers, tablets, or smartphones. Is it going to find my Apple Watch? I don't know for certain about that, so that's kind of interesting. I don't know that I have any other internet-connected devices, except of course I do, because there is my Xbox, there is my mesh network that I use. I mean, there are all sorts of things. Half the reason I'm thinking of doing it is just to try to get a handle on how many IoT things I have, because my immediate thought is, who would have 50? And then I think, maybe me? I don't think I do, but it seems like it's possible. All right, I'm curious. Is this something that you're likely to try out?
First of all, I want to say I don't think Princeton is doing anything bad here. In fact, what I think they're doing is very, very good.
Yeah.
It's almost like open source, where they're saying, we're going to, open the kimono, let you look inside, make sure that we're not doing anything dangerous or bad. And if you find something, we'll fix it. And I love that they're doing that. Is this something that I'm going to try? Absolutely. If nothing else, from an intellectual curiosity point of view. But like you, I think, we all underestimate how many of our devices are connected to the internet these days. Whether it be the scale in my bathroom or my Apple TV. I mean, all of these things are connected one way or the other. And I think we forget about that. And so to have a tool where you can analyze and look and see what's going on is very handy.
Well, you just reminded me, I've got my Apple TV and I've got my smart TV, because I don't think I could get a dumb TV when I bought this television. Right. So, yeah, I may do it. We may actually both have to do this and report back in a week or two about what we found. Yeah, even my printer is connected to the network just so I can print to my printer wirelessly. So who knows what it's doing behind my back. Another kind of sort of follow-up story that's not following up on a particular story, but on stories that we have done in the past. No doubt you remember the Marriott data leak. That was a particular chain, or really several chains, owned by Marriott that was apparently leaking the personal information of nearly 400 million people. Just a few. Yeah, just a couple. Well, here's the thing, though. You can go outside, you can throw a rock, and if you hit a hotel, there is a 67% chance that you have also hit a data leak. 67%. Quoting a piece from Engadget, a Symantec study of more than 1,500 hotels found that 67% of them were unwittingly leaking guests' personal information. The hotels in the study were spread across 54 countries, including the US, Canada, and even some in the European Union, despite strict GDPR protections. They ran the gamut in quality too, from 2-star motels to 5-star beach resorts. Now, if you don't remember what GDPR is, we took a long look at that back on checklist number 90. Who is GDPR? Certainly GDPR in the EU was supposed to stop this kind of thing, so hey, great news. That's going fantastic. The biggest issue, according to Engadget, is confirmation emails. The piece says many of the messages include an active link that directs to a separate website where guests can access their reservation, having to log in again. The booking code and the guest email are often in the URL itself, which in itself is not a big deal. But like many businesses, hotels share your personal data with third parties, meaning that your booking code and email are visible to them as well. The attacker would only need access to your booking code and email in order to find your address, full name, cell phone number, passport number, and other highly sensitive information. Symantec also found that a smaller number of hotels didn't encrypt the links sent in confirmation emails, giving attackers another window of opportunity. Now, the thing that I hate about stories like this is it seems like there is nothing we can do. But going back over it, there are actually some things we can do when it comes down to best practices. Best practices, honestly, is the number one thing that you can do in all security situations. In this case, it has a lot to do with passwords. Use a strong password for these sites and make sure that password is not being used anywhere else. If they've got two-factor authentication, turn it on and use it. And if they don't have two-factor authentication, be a complete nuisance until they do. You send them emails, make phone calls, ask for their IT department until they actually add the security that you feel like you deserve. See, what's weird, though, is, I get what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. From a security standpoint, you're absolutely right. But let's say, see, the problem is I want to keep naming things that are actually real. Hotel 123, right? Hotel 123 has two-factor authentication turned on, but 123 Hotel does not. And so if I am just the average consumer who's annoyed at the extra steps, and they're both 2-star, 3-star hotels, so what do I care? 123 Hotel may actually end up getting my business, even though they're being, less careful, trying to protect my business once they get it. You're right. You're absolutely right. But didn't we hear something recently that I think we did the story here about somebody suing Apple because two-factor authentication was too much of a pain.
Too onerous.
Yes. What a fine line businesses have to walk. Symantec does also suggest, by the way, that people use a VPN to change their hotel reservation when connected to public Wi-Fi, but people should be using a VPN when connected to public Wi-Fi anyway.
I love VPNs even at home. I just feel a lot more secure with VPN turned on. It's a great defense against hackers. I highly suggest everyone uses one. And they essentially anonymize your IP address to make you less trackable, because all of your traffic goes through some server, hundreds of miles away from you, and everyone thinks that's your IP address. A lot of times your IP address is stored in a database along with whatever you're trying to access. So let's say you log in, they might log your IP address as well. And if a hacker gets that, well, then they can try and get back to you based on your IP address. By using a VPN, they can't do that. When you're choosing a VPN, make sure that it's a trusted VPN, and that's really, really important. In other words, choose one that doesn't share data, which also means any VPN recommended by Facebook is probably not a good choice.
Because Facebook, am I right?
Exactly. And if you're not paying for the VPN, then it's probably not a good VPN. Most VPNs will cost you a little bit of money, $5-10 a month. But trust me, the security is well worth it.
It stinks because I was thinking about the phrase when preparing for this story. I was thinking about the phrase that Tim Cook has said many times, but other people have said it too. If you're not paying, you're not the consumer, you're the product. And what I hate is when you come across these kinds of things where it's like, and if you are paying, you're probably still the product. Because like if I go through a booking agent or a booking site or something like that, I know they're getting a piece of, whatever deal is made between me and the hotel. They got to be taking a little bit there, right?
Yep.
But apparently that little bit is not enough. And so they're also, sharing my information with third parties and, yay.
Yeah, it's like Hulu or Netflix, they're charging you, so much per month to access these shows. But you can guarantee they're taking your watching data and either selling it to third parties or using it internally. That's why you can get Hulu for $7 a month.
Yeah. For the record, though, you can't guarantee that. I mean, I think the best thing for you to say would be, I'd be willing to bet. Because if you say I guarantee that,
fair enough.
I don't think Reed Hastings isn't going to be knocking on your door.
I'd be willing to bet that lawyers are looking at me right now because I didn't use the phrase "I'm willing to bet."
There you go. LegalZoom.com on line 3, August. LegalZoom on line 3. Also, you can check the URL of your confirmation link to see if your booking details are exposed. That's what this whole thing was about. I mean, it's really kind of It speaks of a simpler time, I think, that they said, okay, we need to send out these emails to everybody. We need an easy way to generate an email for that person and basically to kind of double check it as well. So the URLs come with your registration number and your email in it. And that's, pretty trustworthy. The problem is it's also laying your information out there that somebody could use to pick up your information. So if you get one of these emails back from somebody and it's got your registration number and your email, what do? I mean, do you alert the company? Do you, just find a different hotel next time? What would you do?
So first of all, I'd look at two things. One, does the URL use an encrypted address? In other words, does it say HTTPS or HTTP at the beginning of it? If it's HTTPS, that helps you to some extent. But, your email probably isn't encrypted, which means those raw URLs, whether they're HTTPS or HTTP, are exposed. And that exposes you. And if your registration number, your account number, anything like that are included in that URL, you're kind of stuck. So, if you're a fan of a particular chain, I would call them, alert them of their security flaw. And then, feel free to point out the breach and continue to be annoying until they fix it. And that's if you're a real fan of the chain. If you don't have any real loyalty, switch to a hotel that uses a safer scheme. Bottom line.
And if you're wondering why we haven't told you what the hotels are, it's because Symantec hasn't said itself. I don't know, why that is. I mean, they have contacted everybody that they found these flaws. Most of them, they say, have started fixing them. Some of them have not started fixing them. They also say that they found similar security flaws at 5 different travel sites. This finding shows it is a general issue in the travel industry and not just a local issue, according to Symantec. So I think the best advice, really, drive everywhere and always stay with friends. Apple makes moves to sync scammy subscriptions. We'll tell you how in a moment, but first a word about MacScan 3 from SecureMac. People used to think that Macs were immune to malware. While that's never been true, it is less true today than it's ever been before. More and more people are using Macs, doing more shopping, storing more information, and giving more bad guys more reasons to try to hack in. The number of malicious files for Macs has increased exponentially over the last decade. Staying ahead of the bad guys is important, and MacScan 3 can help. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software attacks aimed at your Mac. It detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full-range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your computer. Show worry the door with MacScan 3 from SecureMac. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. That's MacScan 3 by SecureMac. Your 30-day free trial is waiting at securemac.com/MacScan. A short follow-up to the scammy subscriptions story we brought you a few months ago. That was months ago, August. Months
Wow.
ago. I went back to check and I was like, what did we do that? Like 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago? It was November. It's crazy. Anyway, these were the apps. I don't know if you remember, but these were the apps that offered free trials, then kicked over to paid subscriptions in a super short period of time and often at ridiculously high prices. They were tricking people basically into subscribing to something. They would say, hey, put your finger here to, do this thing that's in the app. And they were actually using that as a way to get the subscription going. Well, that's terrible. And Apple also thinks that's terrible. And so the company has inserted an extra step into the subscription process. They want you to really know when you sign up for a subscription that you are in fact signing up for a subscription. Mac Rumors has word of a confirmation change made to subscriptions started through iOS. According to the report, with this new confirmation step, when you download an app with a subscription or tap on a subscription option in an app where the subscription feature is optional, you'll see a second subscription pop-up warning after initially confirming a purchase with Face ID or Touch ID on your iPhone or iPad. And spelled out clear as day are the basic terms of the subscription. Mac Rumor says the pop-up warns that the subscription will continue unless canceled in the Settings app at least 1 day before a subscription period ends, requiring users to confirm the notice with an OK button or tap Cancel to cancel the initiation of the subscription. The apparent hope is that this second alert coming from Apple directly will stymie app developers who've been running scammy subscription tricks, like the ones we mentioned a moment ago. Now, I gotta say, I like that Apple is putting this extra step in, but there's something people still have to do if they want to be protected.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to just being vigilant. You can't trust software to do everything for you and protect you from everything. So if you sign up for a subscription and a dialogue pops up, read the dialogue. I think that's like any pop-up that comes up on your screen. Apple put it there for a reason. They want you to read it, and it doesn't really matter whether it's for a subscription or for an error that you're getting for some piece of software. Read the dialog box before you just blindly tap or click yes or okay. My wife is in the other room and she can't hear me right now, but I will tell you, like, every time she's using software and a dialog box pops up, she just clicks on through because she just doesn't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of behavior that can get you in trouble. So just read the pop-up.
The thing that's really cool about this, too, and this is something I'm going to sort of belabor this point, I think, because it's something that Nicholas Toczek brought up as we were talking about this story for today's show. What this really is going to help with is when people are signing up for subscriptions, they don't even realize they're signing up for a subscription. A lot of times, like we said, I mean, when we talked about the scammy subscription thing, they were either giving a subscription that was almost no length of time, or in some of the most nefarious cases, were actually just lying. They weren't saying you're starting a subscription here. They were saying, you know, put your finger here to start this feature, which it turns out was secretly, you know, charging people. So Apple's not, it probably has to do with the number of apps that they, you know, try to, you know, run through the App Store every day, right? They're not going in and saying, no, you can't charge somebody $100 a month for this stupid feature. But what they are doing instead is, I mean, probably automated. They're saying, okay, so now this app has kicked in and said, we're going to charge these people $100 a month. Apple is automatically making sure that people understand that. So even if somebody lied to you the first time you said yes, the second time Apple is coming and saying, okay, just so we're clear, here is exactly what's happening. And if at that point you click OK, I mean, that's kind of on you. On the one hand, they're covering their own backside, I think. But on the other hand, they are actually stepping in where somebody else might, you know, say the loud part loud and the quiet part quiet, and you just don't notice it. Now, while this should help with scammy subscriptions going forward, any time is the right time to make sure that you're not being charged for subscriptions that you've either forgotten about or, you know, don't even know about. Mr. T. I want to do Mr. T's commandments. Do you remember that? We'll do Mr. T's commandments one day, and it'll be just you going, I pity the fool who doesn't use two-factor authentication. Do me a favor, though. Please remind people how to check for subscriptions that are ongoing, you know, and what they need to do if it turns out they don't want them anymore.
Sure. And, you know, you touched on this already, but I do want to emphasize that there's nothing wrong with subscriptions. It's a very valid business model, and there's a lot of subscriptions that you want. Sometimes you just forget about them. Other times, you know, you might have subscribed accidentally. In either case, the best way to find out what you're subscribed to and then unsubscribe from things that you don't want is you go to the iTunes Store on your computer or iOS device. On an iOS device, scroll to the bottom of the store page and tap on Apple ID. And on a computer, tap on Account on the right-hand side of the upper right-hand side of iTunes. You know, once you're in, look for the word subscriptions. Tap that, and you will see a list of subscriptions that you currently have, at which point you can tap for more information and unsubscribe, from those if you no longer want them.
And the other thing, it's funny because I was talking with Nicholas Toczek about this as well. This next one's kind of a pain, but everything that we just said is true for other subscriptions that you might have started other places as well. Having done my taxes fairly recently, my suggestion would be take 2 months of whatever payment method you're likely to use for that. And if you see one turn up and see it turn up on the same date a month later for the exact same thing, try and track down what that is if you have no idea. Because there are some things, you know, that we've signed up for in the past that, you know, are not iOS things. Like when I was signed up for the Washington Post, for example, that was not an iOS subscription. That was a Kindle subscription. I was on it because I was, you know, reading the Washington Post every day. But this is good advice actually outside of the iOS ecosystem as well. But, you know, start with the iOS ones like August was just saying. Also, Facebook. Am I right?
Bingo.
I said I was going to do that from now on, so I did. Hey, if you're looking for more security news and how-tos, the place to look is securemac.com/checklist. Not only will you find notes for this show and shows that have come in the past, but also those shows that I mentioned earlier, the one on GDPR, the one on Internet of Things, the one on how many light bulbs does it take to change the internet. All of those shows and so many more are waiting for you in one place. That place is securemac.com/checklist. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a topic you would like to hear us hit, our email address is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. And we'll talk to you next week.